Ladies and gentlemen, how we doing today? My name is Victor Dandridge, lovingly called the hardest working man in comics, and it is my honor to be here with all of you as we're getting ready to kick off this new episode of Comic Creators After Hours, hosted by the Darren Sanchez. Make some noise for Darren Sanchez, y'all.
Well, it's good to be here in Morocco. We're having a great time.
Absolutely.
And we started this thing where we do a podcast now at the end of every show from about an hour long, and we bring in some of the guests that were unable to travel with us to Morocco.
Right.
When I was invited to bring a team of creators, I called my buddies, naturally, and some of them were busy and couldn't make it. So we started this by bringing in some guests that we know you guys would like to meet. Now, Vic, who would you say are, at any given time, the most powerful people in comic books?
The most powerful people in comic books. Well, at one point you could say Stan Lee was definitely one of the most powerful people. You could argue right now that Kevin Feige is one of the most powerful people, but when it comes to DC, I think we'd have to say Dan DiDio was one of the most powerful people there and has continued that into his new run of books. So, yeah, I think Dan DiDio is one of the most powerful players in comics today.
I would agree. I think you could say publishers or the editors-in-chief of Marvel or DC, and Dan has done it all.
Yeah.
So we really look forward to seeing what he's up to now. And we have Dan on the line calling in from Tampa, Florida.
There we go.
So
I think he's in Tampa. Is he? He might be back home.
If not, Dan, let us know where you calling in from, please.
Dan, how we doing today?
Good, thanks. Good, guys. Actually, I was literally just got back. I was in South Africa, in Cape Town, just a couple of weeks ago. Yeah.
Wow.
Very nice, guys. Let's hear it for Dan DiDio.
Dan DiDio, ladies and gentlemen.
Trying to figure out the shaping of this picture here, so I'm trying to figure out what's the best angle.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah,
I love it.
Perfect.
We got to see those Godzillas on the
Yeah,
shelf.
we do.
I have Godzilla, man. It's my spirit animal.
So listen, you are taking over the continent of Africa. You were just in Cape Town a couple of weeks ago. Now we're beaming into Morocco. So we're making sure your voice is heard throughout the entire continent of Africa to celebrate you for all the work that you've done in comics, which has been an amazing career already. And I think it's just now getting started. I can't wait to talk about all the things that you have upcoming. What were you doing in Cape Town? What exactly brought you down there?
Actually, I was actually there for a convention as well down there. It was a great little show. I had a great show. First time I was ever in the continent, so
Nice.
that made it even more interesting. I always wanted to make it down to the Cape of Good Hope, so it worked out really well for me to be able to set that up. It was a great trip. People were fabulous, and honestly, since leaving DC and after COVID and all that, one of the things I enjoy is traveling to the international shows. I find it absolutely fascinating, and actually it's just such a good feeling coming from the fact that the material that we worked on so myopically within the U.S. has such a far reach and has gone to so many other countries, and it's affected so many other people. So it makes me feel good about that, you know?
I love that. How many of you guys are fans of Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, all up in this room? You guys are big fans? Can I hear some noise from big fans? Yes? Yeah? I love it. They're like, I am. So Dan, we got to talk about your career at DC because it has been so pivotal in the new millennium to get not only these characters back in the forefront, but to get new readers in this new digital age. And I think we've got some things that we can showcase about some of your big runs as publisher, co-publisher for DC. But if you would, tell us exactly how you got involved with comics.
I mean, look, I was a longtime comic fan. I started reading comics in the 70s. And I enjoyed the books. I enjoyed everything about them. They really was something that, I had such fun, and I lost myself in the worlds. And between that and the cartoons and animation, that really was the formative years of my childhood. So I was very fortunate to be able to get a chance to work both in animation and in comics, and to get a chance to give back some of what I got from working in from reading it when I was younger and absorbing that when I was younger, and finally got a chance to give some of that back. And my time at DC, I had actually moved from TV for a number of years, got involved in DC Comics, wasn't really planning to stay there long, but ultimately wound up being there for almost 20 years.
That's an amazing 20 years for us readers, I'll tell you what. Now, Darren, you haven't gotten a chance to meet Dan before.
No, we're kind of in parallel paths.
Okay.
I've worked at Marvel, Wizard, Valiant. I know we probably have like 200 Facebook friends in common. So it's nice to finally meet you, Dan.
Well, Darren, I'm going to say this to you. I actually recognize your name because, believe it or not, before I was working at DC and I was working in TV, I had done some work for Wizard, and I worked on Entertainment Retailing magazine. And for some reason, I feel like you had your name in one of those mastheads in one of those magazines that I was working on during those days.
I definitely did. All the Wizard stuff has my name in there. I had many titles, VP production, that sort of stuff. But yeah, so it's nice to finally meet you, Dan.
Nice to meet you as well. Absolutely.
I imagine with all your years in the industry that you have quite an extensive comic book collection. Are you a collector of comics?
It's funny you say that, because actually what I've been doing is, since my time has slowed down a little bit, I've actually been cataloging all my books.
Oh wow!
And one of the things that happened was when I moved from the West Coast back to the East Coast after leaving after leaving DC, I actually eliminated about a third of my collection. A little bit around 26 to 30 long boxes of comics I gave up.
Wow!
That's a third. Okay.
And I still have about 55 long boxes, to which I consider my collection cut down to the bone. So I wouldn't know how to eliminate any more books from my collection.
What's your prized possession of your comic collection?
It's hard to say. I mean, I was a big Spider-Man fan. And the story goes, when I left DC, they sent me my office, which you don't know this, but I had about 4 offices full of stuff. So I traded everything from my office for the most part, including those 26 long boxes. And I had boxes of collections and toys and all this stuff. And I loaded up a 96-foot long trailer.
Wow.
And sent it to a store. And I said, send me back the least amount of stuff possible. Wow. And I went getting a copy of Spider-Man 1, 5, 6, and 7, to which I call my magic beans. So I did the reverse. I gave away all my stuff for 4 magic beans, and those are my magic beans.
Fantastic. I feel bad for the interns that you no doubt had pack up your office. So I'm sure they love you to this day for that.
You got to pay those dues, baby. That's what that is. Absolutely.
You know what? I appreciate all the work they put into it, and when it filled up my living and dining room, I thought that was a little bit too much. But once it was good to get rid of the stuff. I'm not one of those guys that collects to sell comics. I collect to keep comics.
Right.
So that's one of the things is. My collection's a little beat up because it's been read, but it's mine. And people always say, "How much you think it's worth?" And I said, "I have absolutely no idea.
Right. A lot.
It has no price to me.
Right.
It's immeasurable."
Yeah, my wife hates my collection, and she wants me to give away as much as humanly possible. So, just I assume that a lot of collectors have that issue, space. But and also all collectors like talking about their collection. So I just wanted to bring that up.
I appreciate it. We have stuff all around the house. And it's funny. The thing that I like about a collection or anything is basically everything has its own story.
Mm-hmm.
And you can look at it and you can remember it. And some of these books I can remember where I bought them, when I read them, and things of that nature. And when you have that much of a response when you're in touch with it, it's very hard to give it up.
Yeah, man.
Very true.
All right. So we put together some slides that should spark a memory. Speaking of how every item has a story behind it. We're looking for just a couple of words on each one. So, guys, if we can get the deck back up on the monitor, we would like to comment on that stuff. So while they're working on that.
Yeah, I was going to ask, Dan, who is your favorite DC Comics character?
I really enjoyed the Metalman. I mean, even when it's a story I could tell now is what happened was I knew I was coming to the end of my time. I just realized that I was running out of gas, and there was just too much confusion around me to really feel like we were able to get a hold on what I was hoping to do more.
Sure.
And I was basically tired. So I had one team people developing the Metalmen, and I thought they were really good at what they were doing too, but I sort of knew my time was ending, so I exerted an executive privilege and took the book on myself. I had that one last story to tell, and I got to do it. Which
I
was
love
great.
it.
Who could blame you for that?
Right.
So,
Which element of the Metal Men was your favorite? Was it Nickel? It was Nickel.
I was a big Doc Magnus fan
Oh,
because
word.
he's crazy, and he put the whole thing together. And
Right.
you think about it, it's really quite an insane story. But I remember buying those books when I was a kid, and they stuck with me. They always did. And I think for me, it encapsulates the crazy fantasy.
Right.
The robots were more human than the humans. I think that's one of the things that I find exciting about comics, especially with DC,
Yeah.
more so than Marvel. The peripheral characters are the ones that always intrigued me. I think they always had a much more interesting mix of styles of characters that I found. Like I said, I love the Metal Men, but I have a full Jonah Hex collection. I have a Warlord collection. These are the things that I love because I think it showed the real stretch and genres within comics, and I think that's what makes comics great, not just superheroes, but everything else that comes along with it.
I love it. I love it.
all right, Dan, can you see the deck that we have up with your awesome picture right there?
I got it now.
Okay.
Got
Okay.
it.
Good.
Okay.
All right, here we go.
So here is the first slide. So what comes to mind when you see this image?
New 52.
That's right.
You know, part of the New 52 is I have more people coming up to me now than ever before saying about how much the New 52 brought them into comics and how much they enjoyed it.
Absolutely.
And as I take them now, you don't have to whisper that anymore. You can go out and tell people. It's okay. It's nothing to be ashamed of. We're out there. We're in greater numbers than the ones who hated it. But it had to be done. It was a full company effort. And something that's a bit of a signature piece for all of us at DC because it really did what it was supposed to do, which was to bring people in and to really expand the reach. I was just talking about all the different genres that I love. And we talk about Superman being unmarried or losing his shorts. That's not what New 52 is about. It's our ability to do things like Men of War and I, Vampire and Swamp Thing and Animal Man and Frankenstein and all these different types of books.
Right.
Which, again, like I said, that's what makes comics fun, is by changing the Justice League and changing Superman, if that got people to sample other titles, that was the win.
That is so smart.
Yeah, I thought it was a good idea. I didn't read all of them. Obviously, there was a lot that came out that was new, but what I read, I really enjoyed. So, great job on that.
Absolutely.
Darren, I'm going to say one thing too, and that's the hardest part of these jobs. When you're putting out 50 to 70 books on a monthly basis, you can't put out books that are just for you.
Right.
Not one person should be able to buy all 50 to 70 books. So what you want to do is create as many different styles of books to get the widest audience possible. And that was always the goal,
Yeah.
I agree. I think if there's a perfect issue of My Little Pony, I might read it and not enjoy it, So, but if I know that I recognize that it's done well and it's quality and that the people who are supposed to love it actually love it, then that's the goal has been accomplished. So.
Absolutely.
100% correct. Agree with you completely.
All right, so here's our next slide. Any thoughts on this one?
Flashpoint. Yeah, it's a great story behind Flashpoint. So Flashpoint was originally created to move the company. We were supposed to be moving from East Coast to West Coast.
Right.
And what I did is I wanted to do our version of Age of Apocalypse, meaning do a series of books, get 3 months worth of books that were basically could be produced by another group of talent because ultimately all the storylines were different from the ones that we were currently telling. The goal was the company was going to move from East Coast to West Coast, and during that move, these books would be put out. So while everything was in transition and all the people were moving and none of the equipment was working, we still were able to put out comics.
Smart.
Lo and behold, we didn't move, so we decided to go ahead with Flashpoint. Anyway, because it was on the schedule.
Right.
And ultimately, as we were kicking off New 52, we wound up marrying the two together. It was never the plan to have Flashpoint go into New 52. They were in two separate items, then brought together to create one big event. The caveat to that is, ultimately, we did move, and we had to come up with another stunt to create another series of books to fill the gap in time that we're moving. And that's how Convergence was born.
Got
It
you.
was the second child.
So Flashpoint was moving practice, and,
Right.
and you guys got it down on Convergence. Very nice.
Exactly. And then we wound up moving during the Convergence period. Yeah.
What I think is really great about Flashpoint not being built to connect into the 52 is just the majesty of storytelling that you guys wield when you can take two separate properties and go, there's a connection here. That's very innovative and creative. Can you tell me what the response was like from internally when you're like, hey, I think this opens the door to this, let's marry them?
Yeah, it was, there was some resistance, be honest with you, but primarily because, when people have a story in their mind,
right,
and they have the clarity of the beginning, middle, and end, if something upsets that balance, it gets people out of their groove, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Right.
So because of that, we had to sit down, we had to figure out how to marry it together. We had a couple of interesting ideas that we started with the New 52 that never really took hold. Things like the Pandora concept and things like that.
Right.
But I feel that because it was an alternate reality and an alternate change, and you're messing with time, which was the whole purpose of Flashpoint, it was a very easy transition because once you come out of Flashpoint, you could just get right into the new thing and you don't really have to explain much more other than the fact that this is what the new reality is.
I love it.
Right,
Love
and
it.
anytime you change the status quo in a comic story, you're going to find some resistance, even if it's the best idea in the world. If you kill off a character people love, I'm sure George R.R. Martin heard a lot when he killed off a few characters, and I won't give you guys any Game of Thrones spoilers. But doing that, it can be very polarizing. So I know you made some tough decisions, and I respect that. So
Absolutely.
Next call. This one
Yes.
is multiple projects, so feel free to pick one that sparks a memory for you.
Okay, well, all three are three separate memories. Blackest Night was actually what I consider the bookend for me, which probably starts with Identity Crisis, Countdown to Infinite Crisis, and brings us out to Blackest Night. That's in some ways one big story.
Right.
Everything's coming through, and the interesting part is characters that we're killing throughout the series all come back at the end of Blackest Night into Brightest Day. So there was the level of closure there. I'm going to say something weird about Rebirth.
Let's
Rebirth
go.
for me is a little bit of a white flag. Okay.
Oh, wow.
And I'm going to explain that to you.
Yeah.
Because it's highly successful, which we knew it would be. I knew it would be, but I call it a little bit of a white flag. And why I say that is this: New 52 was created to really diversify the line of books, advance the storytelling, and really create a spot, jump on point, for where people could come in cold and interested and learn everything about the DC universe and move forward. After a while, the intent of what New 52, some of the folks, we lost our way, and the wheels got a little wobbly on the bus, and we knew we had to do it. Rebirth was always in the bag as the safety latch, meaning that if things didn't work out well, we had to go back to the status quo. And not only did we have to go back to the status quo, but we also decided that we realized that the number of titles that we could put out, regardless of what they are, didn't attract the attention as the top characters. So the only way that we can really drive a strong sales number, which is that's what you're tasked to do as publisher,
Right.
was to double down and double ship a lot of our better characters. So why I consider a little bit of white flag is, number one, we basically admitted that we didn't have a deep bench as Marvel. Marvel has a very deep bench of characters. They can go in 20, 30, almost 40 characters and put them out as individual books and have some level of success with them. The DC characters didn't have that deep a bench as Marvel, so we had to double down on the characters that were our most successful ones, which meant that we were limiting the types of stories we're telling because we were staying focused on just the higher end characters and not the different ones. And number two is that we went back to a status quo, which basically in some ways states that we only have the audience that existed and that we weren't growing an audience anymore.
That's
and
powerful.
Why?
That's a very powerful analysis right there.
But it's the reality, you know.
Gotcha.
And as a publisher, if you're tasked at that time to be profitable, and
Right.
and show growth in sales, this way it became the way to do it.
But
And
it makes sense because when you create an event, you're creating excitement. And if the event, even if let's say you made 12 big changes, if you keep 2 of them, then you've really done something. And even with the death of Superman, at some point you know they're going to come back to where they started. Maybe not the exact status quo, but they're going to come back and bring him back to life. The way they did it was pretty cool and unexpected. And I think as long as you're giving them good stories and they're not predictable, and you got to sell books, and that's your job. So makes sense to me.
Yeah.
yes, but like I said, but Rebirth, we knew we needed to basically drive the line back again. So it was very successful. But in my mind, my goal was also trying to grow the line, and I hated it felt like a little bit of a retreat.
Right.
It's where it is.
Nothing but respect, though.
Did Superman find his pants?
He did. He did.
Somebody put them on. They just couldn't. I spent more time arguing about the silliest things, like Superman's pants, and during New 52, the color of Nightwing's logo.
Wow.
Because we went red. I can't tell you how many people presented us stories on how to get Nightwing back in blue. And I kept on saying, you're missing the point.
Right.
What we're doing here.
Awesome.
That's too funny.
All right, so we're going to click on to the next slide here, and this is we want to really hear about what you're doing now, and with your projects with Frank Miller. If you could give us an idea of how that's going and how you guys came
as a
together.
matter of fact, we hit a little bit of a pause button. I hate to admit it, but we did. And the reason why we did is because of where the market stands at this moment in time. It's a lot more difficult in doing it. Frank was very particular about how he wanted to do books in collections and things, and they were more high-end style. He wanted to go more hardcover than softcover. He didn't want to do things just in the normal route. And to be perfectly honest, the return that we were getting on the periodicals was hard to transfer over to handle the costs of moving to a hardcover book. So it was I'm helping Frank make the transition over to working with Abrams, much more better at servicing what he wanted to do with his material. And then we'll see what happens after that. I know he has 1 or 2 projects he wants to do. But for me, it was a great, listen, I got a chance. Frank and I've known Frank for almost 20 years. We got a chance to work side by side for the last 3 years together. He has a real love of comics, and it was a fun time to do it. But right now, the industry's in flux. I don't even know flux is not even the proper word. It's
Right.
It's a little lethargic. It's a little quiet. Nothing's taking hold. Where we stand right now is most of the sales interest is in licensed properties or things from the past. As I say, the 90s are hot, which is, I guess, a good thing.
Right.
When the hottest cartoon on the air right now is called, X-Men '97. You have to question about where the future lies. But the reality is, I think we're in a phase, and what I'm hoping is that it's something that we can work our way through, and I'd start to identify new flavors, new sensibilities for a new audience, which might include just breaking the entire format and system we have, and have to start brand new. I have no idea, dime novels gave way to pulps gave way to comics, and comics, might give way to something else someday.
That's right.
Well, that brings to mind, we want to get your opinion on something. We've been asked this pretty much every day that we've been here from a very smart audience of young kids have asked this question mostly. And how do we feel? And when they ask, they're speaking to a panel of 10 artists. How do you feel about AI and how it might affect the industry going forward?
Me personally, I'll give you an analogy rather than statement. Okay.
There we go.
How's this? When I worked in TV, I just worked for Saturday morning television. One of the shows I worked on was a show called Reboot, which is the first computer animated show on the air. When I left ABC, I joined the company that created Reboot, Mainframe Entertainment. First as a story editor, then as their VP of business affairs and development. And my job was to convince a world that computer animations wasn't an evil, and that it wasn't replacing cell animation. It was just another form. And everybody I pitched, nobody understood what computer animation was. Nobody wanted to deal with it. And it wasn't until we did Beast Wars that we had success on that series that people started to see the potential in that. Everything's a tool.
Right.
There you go.
Everything's
Exactly.
a tool, and everything's just another tool to tell your story, and just another tool to tell your craft, just another tool. Do not use it to replace you, use it to help you.
To grow. Yeah, you have to grow. Because the people who make the 2D animation, they're not getting as much work anymore. And kids today expect a Pixar level sort of thing if it's coming from Disney or DreamWorks or some company like that. So the 2D stuff, it's not phased out completely. It's got its place, especially on television. But the CGI kind of stuff it has taken over. And I got a feeling that that's kind of what's going to happen with AI. But it's going to be the artists that are using AI. AI is not going to replace the artist. It's the artists that will be using AI to make their work even better. And that's the idea.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. I look at computer coloring. Okay, we watch the coloring change. You know, I look at computer coloring, and quite honestly, anybody thinks they can computer color. Anybody could, because you have the tools available, thinks you're a colorist. Nothing is further from the truth, especially when it comes to computer coloring. Okay, if you look at these books, you look at these people who are coloring themselves, they look like mud or somebody vomited Skittles on the page. Okay, and honestly, that shows you that you still need talent, ability, understanding, craft in order to make these things work. You know, and colorists did not reject the computer coloring. The true colorists learned how to use those tools to their benefit.
Right.
And the goal is for all these extraordinarily talented people to find ways to use these tools for their benefit. And I think ultimately there we'll see what comes from that, you know. But I'm a big believer that we should always be. You can't be scared of things.
Right.
You have to understand them, and you have to understand the craft and the limitations of what they can be. You just don't take it for face value and shut anything off. You try to figure out how to make things work for the way you want things to be.
I love that.
Now, there's a microcosm to that, and it's kind of how I feel every time a new version of Photoshop comes out or a new Mac operating system comes out. It's like, what am I going to have to relearn, or what am I find out that there's a way to do it better that I'll never ever do probably. So, you know, I'll still do it the wrong way by clipping things and not just click, you know, delete background. You know, so it's everyone has to be flexible and be willing to grow into the next thing and move forward.
I love it. Dan, we're getting ready to go to audience questions, but I did want to chime in with a comment that I appreciate the way that I think that you're a bit of a futurist, looking at what the comic book industry needs, not only to continue surviving, but to grow and bring in new audiences. And, you know, whether that's the work that you did with DC or the work that you've done with Frank, always trying to find ways to innovate and engage, I think is one of your greatest strengths. It's one of the things that I've loved the most about your career, and can't wait to see whatever it is that you're going to do next. So thank you for always being that guy looking forward and not being afraid of what came behind. I think that's important.
As I like to say, whatever we do, nobody dies.
Hey, that's important. That's so important.
I don't know how to say it. That means we have the ability to fail.
That's right.
Over and over again. If we, you know, but we should always be trying and always figuring it out.
Absolutely.
I use the one excuse. One little story from DC. One little DC story.
What you got?
So DC in the '60s, you know, had incredible success during the Batman TV show.
Right.
Okay. And then what happened was the Batman TV show ended, and it almost took the line with it. So they scrambled to create new things. They tried to create characters that touched and connected with the current audience. They come up with Hawk and Dove and Creeper and all these different things that are theoretically for the new audience. They fail. But ultimately, they connect with someone, and 20 years later and 30 years later, they become someone's favorite, and they get reinvented, and all of a sudden, they're part of a television show or something down the future. We should always be trying. We should not be afraid to fail. We should always be pushing our limits. And remember, it's not just about us. We shouldn't be creating for us. If you're out there and you're trying to really make a difference, you should be looking at the real world around you and say, how do I speak to this world in a way that's entertaining for me, but entertaining for them too?
I love that. Absolutely love that.
It's like a chef who doesn't necessarily like celery or something. That doesn't mean they're not going to use it if the dish
Absolutely
calls
correct.
for celery.
100%.
So you want to make it and make it as good as possible so the right people enjoy the story, the people you're intending it for. And
Exactly.
totally understand.
I love that. Okay, so we've got 4 prizes that we're going to give to folks who ask some questions. So if you are
I
interested,
get a prize? No prize.
no, you are the prize, Dan. You are the
Oh,
prize.
I don't know about that. Oh, boy.
So if you have a question,
I feel
please
bad for
raise
those
your
guys.
hand, and we will bring a microphone over to you. But feel free to ask a question to Dan DiDio about making comics, publishing, anything that you can think of that might be pertinent.
So my question is, what are the main inspirations when writing a story?
Oh, that's a big one.
What is your main inspiration when writing a story?
That's a big one.
You know what? It's funny. Again, I love stories to tell stories. If you ever watched a show called Ray Bradbury Theater, he starts out with he goes into his office and there's all these toys and things around his sketch everywhere, and he looks around. He goes, "What's going to be the thing that sparks this new idea? What's going to spark?" What I think about is what I want to tell. By looking at the world around me, what I'm interested in, what people are interested in hearing, what people are talking about, and then try to find a way to contextualize that story with characters and things that are also recognizable, to pull it all together into something that could be fun and enjoyable. So I'm always looking around me. I'm always inspired by everything. I've got scrapbooks and notes all around me. Everyone seems like a good idea when I write it down. And then when you read it 2 days later, you're wondering, whatever you're thinking. But every once in a while, there's something good that you want to keep to, you know?
My name is Hakima. My question is, what has been the most challenging project you have worked on?
Oh, that's a great question. What has been your most challenging project that you have worked on?
You know, everything has a challenge associated with it. The goal is, and I'm going to say this to you, the real question is, how much do you want it to happen, and how hard do you want to work to make it happen, regardless of the challenge? And I think it shows the passion behind the project and the commitment, and then hopefully it brings out the quality too.
I love that.
The better parts are worth fighting harder for, you know.
Absolutely.
But I can tell you, I pretty much fought for everything. If you want to know the truth, everything was a fight.
I love it. I love it. We got another one right here. What's your name?
My name is Yahya. Hello. What's your biggest influence in your career?
Oh, wow. That's a good one. What is your biggest influence in your career?
Wow, that's a great question.
Right?
It's if I ever wanted to own a single page of art, in Fantastic Four Annual 5, I think it is, there's this page where it's supposed to be giving the behind the scenes of how a comic was made. And I'm reading this as a kid. And Stan Lee is standing on top of a desk with a sword in his hand. Jack Kirby's sketching it, and everybody else in the room is running for cover because these guys are acting like maniacs. And there's this weird manic energy on this page. And I saw that page of art, and I said, you know what? I want to work in comics. I want to be creative.
Is that a Kirby page? Is that a Jack Kirby page?
Is that a Kirby
It's a
page?
Jack Kirby page, yeah.
Of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah, and it's just one of those scenes where it just captured this manic energy that I wanted to be part of. It excited me. So that was the thing that made me want to be involved in comics. For inspiration, I used to, when I was working in animation, I'll tell you a secret. When I was working in animation, my secret was I used to hire comic writers to work for me. And I worked with Len Wein and Mark Wolfman, Christy Marks, a bunch of folks. Lee Simonson, a bunch of folks. And I'm going to tell you the truth. The reason why I worked with them wasn't because I thought they were going to do the best animated shows. I worked with them because I wanted to hear their comic book stories about behind the scenes.
That's genius.
And I used to sit with Len, and he would tell me all the stories about Crisis and this and how they were supposed to do all these things. And he was a real mentor to me, and was one of those guys that I always remember just the sheer enthusiasm and love of comics came through in every conversation we had. And again, that was another thing that made me want to be part of that industry.
My question is how you can find more idea to complete a story.
Ooh, how can you find more ideas to complete your stories? That's a really good one. Here's a gift for you. Thank you.
Okay. I was going to say, actually, I'm still searching. I'm in the middle of a script right now, and I've rewritten the ending 3 times. So the answer is sometimes it comes to you, sometimes it doesn't. You know what? Again, tell you a story. Ready? One more story. So I had a chance to meet Stephen King, right? And it was a highlight of me because I'm a huge Stephen King fan. You probably see a bunch of Stephen King books behind me. So I'm a big Stephen King fan. I got a chance to meet him, and as I'm talking to him, I go, I love all your stuff, but they all have really sad, down endings. And he goes, "What are you talking about?" He goes, my books end happy. And I said, "No, they don't. Dead Zone ends happy. This ends happy." And I go into this, and Stephen King stops me and goes, Cujo has a happy ending. And I said, spoiler, the little boy dies at the end of the book. And he stops. And he said, "That's right." He goes, "The boy did die." He goes, "I didn't want him to, but the only reason why he died is because it was true to the story. And it had to work that way." And what I say is that if you tell a story that comes to life and you bring the characters to life in your mind and you're telling their adventure, the story starts to tell itself.
Absolutely.
And the characters sort of tell you where it's going to go and how it's going to end, you know? And what you have to do is you have to follow the flow of the story. You have to flow the energy of the story and bring it to its logical conclusion. And I think that's what I've always said. So storytelling is like running water. It'll never follow the same path. It'll always move different roads. You just got to follow the flow, because if it flows naturally and moves easily, that means the story works and it's going to be better in the end.
Love that. Absolutely love that. That's amazing. Ladies and gentlemen, let's make some noise for Dan DiDio. Thank him for coming in today.
Thank you,
Dan,
guys.
thank you so very much.
Hey,
Absolutely
Dan,
compelling.
where can they find you on social media? Do you have?
Yeah, I have an Instagram. It's something, Dan, something.
Yeah, I'm the same way, man.
We'll find a way to share it with everyone. Maybe next time we'll get Dan here live.
Probably the best place to find me.
Perfection.
Next time we get the opportunity to assemble a team, whether it's coming here to Morocco or to Abu Dhabi or anywhere, we'll give you a call and see if maybe you want to take a trip.
Yeah, I did the Abu Dhabi trip last year. It was a great time. So thank you.
It.
Okay.
One more time for Dan DiDio, ladies and gentlemen. Dan, thank you so very much, man. Always appreciate chatting with you. We will chat with you again soon.
Take care, buddy.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Ladies and gents, wow, those were some great questions. Give yourselves a round of applause for that, because that was amazing.
Good job, guys.
You guys, you always dig deep, and I absolutely adore that. Man, I'm inspired now. I don't know how you feel, but I want to go make some comics now.
I'm ready. I'm ready to write. Ready to put some stories together.
Right. And
we just happen to be in the same hotel with a whole bunch of artists.
Oh snap! Some comics might come out of this one way or the other. That's how it is. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for coming through, checking out the live podcast. You guys will be able to find this on YouTube. Comics After Hours will be the channel, and definitely hope that you subscribe. This is going to be Darren's show, so to help it grow, share it, talk about it with everybody, watch it, and we'll see what other guests we have in the upcoming episodes.
So we have some good guests coming up this week. We definitely do. So check in every day, and do you want to stay for a couple of minutes?
We can stay for a couple of minutes if you guys have some things for us to sign. We're more than happy to do so.
Okay, yeah. So we just asked that you sign this.